Number 10. Geist. Geist actually made his first appearance in Wolverine. He first shows up in Wolverine's 1989 series in issue 17. There he is working for the dictator Felix Caradid, who is the ruler of Tierra Verde. But we also learn of Geist's origins in this story, and his long history of villainy. Geist is Dr. Nikolaus Geist, a scientist who initially worked alongside Germany during World War II, even acting as the Führer's advisor for a time, giving him advice on what to do with his prisoners, how to treat them, and where to keep them. I think you know what I'm talking about here. Geist proved that he was truly one of the most vile villains of Wolverine's. Geist turned himself into a cyborg, though not a particularly strong one. He's kind of an old man cyborg. He was more concerned with longevity in his life than any kind of strength. And where his power truly shines is within his mind. Being brilliant, he managed to work his way into the company of powerful people, convincing them to let him act as their advisor or their chief scientist. Geist was also behind the unleashing of another seemingly unstoppable villain of the time, SPORE. SPORE was pretty crazy, to be honest. Number 9. Cyber. Weirdly, Geist is not the only cyborg enemy of Wolverine. In fact, he kind of has a few of those. I'm actually surprised none of them ever reached out and attempted to start a team all their own, like the cyborg Wolverine enemy team dedicated to being cyborgs and taking down Wolverine. Sadly, it might be a little too late now, as quite a few of the cyborg-based enemies that I'm thinking of at least have been seemingly perma-killed. However, Cyber, despite being killed more than once, is actually not one of those. He is currently alive in the comics and was last spotted in 2018 in a Ben Reilly comic, surprisingly. Cyber initially was introduced as a Wolverine villain. His first form was fairly unstoppable and possessed powers similar to Wolverine, including retractable claws and a healing factor, because Wolverine villain. But it should be noted, every time he's come back he's been like a little bit different in terms of what his power set is. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more amazingly powerful Wolverine villains, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. And maybe comment below, and maybe share, why not? Number 8. Mystique. Mystique is an iconic villain for Wolverine, starting out as his enemy way back in the times of the Wild West, just as that period in history was actually ending, circa 1921. The two met for the first time way back then, and although Logan initially decided to trust Raven, she would inevitably end up stabbing him in the back. Something Wolverine would not forget over the years whenever he ran into her again. Mystique isn't a super powerful character in terms of who can hit the hardest, but she is powerful in the sense that she is a master deceiver and manipulator. She has tricked some of the most cunning and brilliant heroes in comics into doing exactly what she wants. She is also super mysterious. We don't actually really even know how old she is, and there are still lots of gaps when it comes to her backstory. Mystique is a shapeshifter who can transform into other humanoid beings, as well as more abstract things sometimes, depending on who's writing her. She can also disguise herself in any kind of garb she so chooses, as often the clothing we see her in is also created via her shapeshifting. Mystique can also alter her vocal cords to allow her to match anyone that she chooses to impersonate, and can even alter her form to match their retina and their fingerprints exactly. Hence why she's such a dangerous enemy to have. Master Infiltrator.
Number 7. Spiral. Ricochet Rita was once a professional stunt performer. She became friends with a guy named Longshot, who was actually from, well, not Earth, he was from Mojoverse. She was then attacked by this insane future version of herself named Spiral. Now thankfully she was able to defeat Spiral, but after that she followed her heart. She went back to the dimension with Longshot, she went back to the Mojoverse. And then when they got there, they were both captured by Mojo himself. And Longshot's mind was wiped. He forgot Rita entirely. And as for Rita, well, things get actually a lot worse and more confusing. Mojo got his scientist Ares to modify her mentally and physically, so now she's got 6 arms, he turned her hair gray, and she could also see other dimensions, so a bit of an upgrade, that's cool. She was a twisted version of Mojo in a way, and she was trained in the dark arts of magic and body modification. So this future version of her was, well, it was just that. It was a dark future of what ended up happening. Nice little time loop there. Spiral also appears in the X-Men animated series, and she makes Wolverine's life hell in Volume 2, Issue 51. I'd love to see Spiral fight 6-armed Spider-Man. I wonder who would win that one.
Number 6. Omega Red. I actually feel pretty bad putting Arcady lower on this list. I think he's a pretty powerful and badass villain all in all, but at the end of the day he can kind of be manipulated by others pretty easily, which is what makes him a little bit weaker to me in terms of where I wanted to rank him here. He only recently got his carbonadium synthesizer back after years of being separated from it. Generally, others wielding this important device have made him their puppet for as long as they possess it, hence why it's one of his weaknesses. The latest person to make Omega Red their loyal servant was Dracula, who was using Red to spy on Krakoa. Fortunately, Arcady managed to get the synthesizer back, which means we might actually get to see more of Omega Red's full potential in the future. Omega Red is pretty crazy powerful while in full control of himself. He can emit death spores, which are lethal and actually kill most people who come near them. He's also an energy vampire, draining others' life force in order to keep himself alive. This can also bolster Omega Red or be a weakness depending on the circumstance. And like many of Wolverine's most deadly villains, he's also a super skilled fighter with a healing factor. Pretty much everyone gets a healing factor. You kinda need it if you're going up against Wolverine and you want to stand a chance.
Number 5. Charlie Chainsaw. This guy is literally 2 chains. Whenever I see that one card from Cards Against Humanity, the one that says chainsaws for hands, I always laugh because that's such a terrible situation to be in. I'm always like, imagine this dude, imagine him as a villain, we'd be doomed. Well, lo and behold, he's a villain, and we're doomed. He first appeared in Wolverine Weapon X issue 7. He was the guy wandering around without hands, actually, at this point. The staff was following him in the hallways, asking for Charlie to come back. He was like, what do? I don't have hands, I can't open doors, help. And then 6 pages later, the surgery is complete. Charlie Chainsaw is born. Charlie remained loyal to Rotwell until Logan ripped through those chainsaws. And that sounds like a pretty stressful life. He's for sure a chain smoker.
Number 4. Sabretooth. Victor Creed might not be an insanely powerful villain in comparison to some of the others on this list, but when it comes to tormenting Wolverine, he's probably one of the best that there is. Not only does Victor possess a similar power set, but he also is generally the one who comes out on top whenever he ends up in a brawl with Wolverine, which is pretty often, especially considering Sabretooth has a habit of visiting Wolverine on his birthday. In fact, in his newly announced series, I'm really hoping Victor still gets that chance to keep up appearances, because he's a great antagonist for Wolverine, and I kinda love that weird tradition of the smackdown on Wolverine's birthday. Not only is Sabretooth bested Wolverine physically, but he's also got a sharp wit, and even once devised a plot to hurt Wolverine by pitting him against his son, forcing Logan to drown his son in a puddle in the end to stop him, which ends up somehow being even more heartbreaking than you think. Especially considering that son was Daken, and as I said, Daken has been kinda out to kill his dad in the past, so you wouldn't think that would make you sad, but it did. It was pretty sad.
Number 3. Mr. X. Making his first appearance in Wolverine Volume 2, issue 159, Mr. X is the only name given about this guy, and he was kind of obsessed with death growing up. He saw a woman get hit by a car at a young age, and then trauma ensued. And then at the same time, it unlocked his mutant ability, being that of telepathy. He trained in combat with numerous teachers, where he would get so good that he would then just take them out afterwards. He would learn from them and then kill them. Guy's ruthless. He was obsessed with violence, so when he heard about Wolverine, he was like, oh, I have to fight this guy, let's do it. Mr. X wanted to be the best, and he did beat Logan in their first encounter. Later on, however, in issue 168 during the annual Bloodsport tournament in Madripoor, Mr. X was beating everybody along the way. He even beat Taskmaster at some point. How crazy is that? That telepathy sure does come in handy. He knew which hits were coming and when. Pretty unfair, but also pretty cool, I have to admit.
Number 2. Gorgon. Gorgon is an impressive fighter, as we saw in the previous X-Men series in 2019. In issue number 4, Gorgon is revealed to be a member of the security detail that Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse take with them while attending a diplomatic dinner with the other world leaders. Gorgon is asked to hand over his swords at the security clearance gate, as they are deemed too overt as far as permitted security weapons go. But Gorgon actually refuses, and goes to respond with, "The problem is that you look at me and you think the blade is the weapon." And later he proves that to be very true. The crazy thing about this issue is that Gorgon doesn't even resort to using his powers at all in the issue, and yet he takes out countless enemies just with his blades and skills alone. His mutant ability is that he turns any who make eye contact with him into stone, hence his name, Gorgon. However, in this issue, all he uses are his 2 blades and his insane fighting skills to defeat multiple enemies. I say defeat because course, remember, this is Krakoa, so no killing allowed. Maiming through dismemberment of limbs, however, that is permissible, as we see in that issue. Number 1. Ogun. Ogun was pretty powerful. He was a warrior who Wolverine met in China. He would end up becoming Wolverine's teacher and mentor for years. The two became close enough that Wolverine actually thought of Ogun as a father figure. However, one night when the two were attacked, it was revealed that Ogun had learned how to cheat death, effectively becoming immortal. After this incident, he became more obsessed with immortality, focusing solely on perfecting his technique. Perfection to him was being able to leave his own body and take over the body of others, allowing him to gain more power and in essence remain eternally young. He planned to use this technique on Logan actually, but Logan left before Ogun could attempt it. Later, Ogun would temporarily possess Kitty Pryde, but be defeated by Wolverine. He was even at one point sent to Hell and still managed to return, so he's pretty unstoppable.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Dirtnap. No real name also, just goes by Dirtnap. So sick. Making his first few little steps in Wolverine Volume 2, issue 95, Dirtnap is a mutant that can absorb living beings and take their forms. The Kirby of the Marvel Universe, essentially. Now, he ran into Wolverine for the first time when Dirtnap absorbed a small child, and then right after he attempted to absorb Wolverine, seeing as Logan's healing factor would make that pretty exhausting, Dirtnap absorbed a rat, and then he fled the scene, instead of, absorbing a faster creature. Maybe one that could fly would be nice. So he started off as a mutant with his amazing ability, and now he's forever a rat like Peter Pettigrew. A rat with a red smiley face. Just, ugh, how comforting is that? Number 9, Roughhouse. Just that name alone, you know you're in for a little bit of trouble. He first appeared in Wolverine Volume 2, issue 4. It was speculated that Roughhouse was from Asgard. He has mythological origins, but still he was classified as a mutant. He's a descendant from the Asgardian native rock trolls, so he could be a god, he could be a troll, he could be a giant, who knows. Either way, he's trouble. His appearance isn't just a style choice also. He actually let the hair grow out to hide all the scars from his horrible father that he left behind. In Wolverine Volume 2, issue 18, Wolverine had to go head to head with the mythical man, and at this point, Geist's men gave Roadhouse experimental narcotics, and it just drove him insane, as most experimental narcotics do. So when Wolverine fought him, he was kind of taking it easy on him in a way, seeing as he was out of it, he was kind of loopy. Wolverine came face to face with Roughhouse after the adamantium was stripped from his skeleton, and Logan actually lost this fight. He got knocked out, and then Roughhouse took him back to his hideout, where he and BLOODSCREAM tortured Wolverine for days. He's an Asgardian descendant, so Roughhouse has super speed, super strength, all the usual super stuff, but like Logan, Roughhouse too inherited the healing factor. He's been referred to as the weaker Wolverine despite his mythical background. Number 8, BLOODSCREAM. Another villain that helped Roughhouse with the torture of Wolverine was BLOODSCREAM. These names are so violent, oh my god. So BLOODSCREAM entered comics in issue 4 of Wolverine Volume 2. He was originally a surgeon named Zachariah Ravenscraft, and he would travel with Sir Francis Drake back in the 17th century. So he's a little bit old. What's his secret to everlasting life? Well, let me tell you. Canadian natives injured the doctor during a scuffle, and then he was forced to meet a healer named Dagu to treat him. Dagu used an eldritch spell to keep him in between life and death, resulting in this vampire hybrid of a man. Now the name BLOODSCREAM is making more sense now, I bet. Immortal and always hungry, BLOODSCREAM demands Dagu to set him back to doctor mode. Reverse this curse, please and thank you, sir. Now in order to do so, he needed the blood of another immortal. BLOODSCREAM met Wolverine for the first time in World War II, and that's when he first thought that the mutant was immortal. So him and Roughhouse often paired up to attempt to take him down numerous times.
Number 7, Lady Deathstrike. Lady Deathstrike is Yuriko Oyama, the daughter of Kenji Oyama, the man who invented the adamantium bonding process. So you can imagine how personal this feud is. Despite the fact that Kenji mistreated his daughter, Yuriko, after her father's death, would feel differently about him and actually ended up deciding to follow in his footsteps and continue his research. She also aimed to track down the one he blamed for stealing his life's work, Wolverine. Of course, Logan hadn't actually stolen the work, but he was the subject it had been used on to bond his bones with adamantium. Initially, she pursued him because she wanted his skeleton so that she could actually study it in an effort to continue her father's work and relearn the process that he had lost when his research was stolen. Lady Deathstrike would go on to become a dangerous and powerful criminal, upgrading her body and turning herself into a cyborg. She is known for her retractable fingernails, which are razor sharp and laced with adamantium, making them super strong and able to cut through most metals, and most materials in general.
Number 6, Dr. Rot. Nice. That name is pretty disgusting right off the top. Now his real name is a little more tame. His name's Algernon Rotwell. He was sent to Dunwich Sanatorium because he was mad, but he wasn't superpowered by any means, just a little bit insane. While he was in there, he was able to start a riot and take control, which led him to harvesting the employees' brains. So he made this god brain machine, and yes, it's as gross as you would imagine. Check it out. Squishy. Imagine the smell. So he captured Logan, made him lose his memory, tortured him, and then claimed the only way to get better is just to embrace and let go of all that anger and aggression. Just let it out. They wanted him to let it out and to hurt people. So he found out these code phrases that were put in from Weapon X, so he made Logan do all these brutal attacks, and he wasn't even sure if he was awake or not. It was wild. It was a bad time. Dr. Rot was honestly pretty badass for a guy who has no powers. He created the flesh puppets using Logan's brain tissue. Also, yeah, flesh puppets. That's a nice way to say zombies.
Number 5. Daken. Akihiro is more of an ally of Wolverine's currently in the comics. On Krakoa, it seems everyone is given that second chance at family that they've always yearned for, Daken and Logan included. I really love the Wolverine fam actually. They're probably one of my favorite families over on Krakoa right now. But before Akihiro was on Wolverine's side and helping to defend and potentially protect him against other villains, like Omega Red actually, alongside the rest of the members of the family, he was actually attempting to kill his dad, if you can believe that, multiple times. Daken, being the almost naturally born son of Itsu and Logan, has powers very similar to his father. He possesses a healing factor and even bone claws, but his wrists. He also ages a lot more slowly, but he also has the added ability of manipulating others' pheromones, allowing him to control or influence them. He's also really good at fighting. Really good.
Number 4. Spore. Making his first appearance in Wolverine Volume 2, Issue 21, Spore is a living bioweapon created from the Deviants. This was way back when they were at war with the Eternals in the prehistoric era. So Spore consumed everything in its path, be it humans, deviants, and even Eternals. He targeted the Celestials, so they naturally had to destroy him during the second host. But in the next issue, Spore came back to life. Turns out when he was liquefied, he was absorbed into all that soil underneath him. So when that land became a controlled area for Felix Guillermo Caridad to grow his stuff, his bad stuff that I can't say, some of those narcotics that he was using was infused with Spore. So Felix became the next Spore, and it's an awful conundrum. Number 5. Deathwatch. First entering comics in Ghost Rider Volume 3, Issue 1, Deathwatch is a demon. How fun is that? But he poses as a crime boss named Stephen Lawrence, so okay, not totally a demon. One of his first things that he did actually was order his Death Spawn ninjas to steal a large amount of biotoxin and attack New York. So right off the bat, he is a horrible villain. He gets his energy from pain and death, and he can connect to you mentally with just one touch. So you don't want to be anywhere near him. Doesn't feel too good. During Marvel Comics Presents issue 71, he got himself on Logan's death list, right after Wolverine bumped into his men in Madripoor. He carries a katana with him and firearms, and if there's one guy to absorb pain and death from, well, Wolverine's got quite a bit to give. Number 2. Razor Fist. After getting his arms cut off, master martial artist Douglas Scott got a pretty shiny upgrade instead of those hands. He worked alongside his brother William Scott, and after Shang-Chi defeated both the mercenaries, Razor Fist started to work with the crime lord Roche in Madripoor. His job was to assassinate Wolverine, which, okay, easy peasy, sure, sounds great. Now the first fight, Wolverine actually did lose. Razor Fist shucked him off of a cliff. Nice. Now the next encounter, Razor Fist got what was coming. He tried to take on Hawkeye as well at one point. He was trying to cut off his right arm for a reward, but Razor Fist isn't superpowered. He's just a guy with blades for hands. I mean, who would you rather fight, honestly? Razor Fist or Chainsaw Charlie? I feel like Charlie would be better because you'd hear him. He's loud at least, so you have like a warning. I don't know, both are pretty terrifying. Both are equally as terrifying. And finally, number 1, Romulus. That guy I mentioned earlier in this list. Let's talk about him. He made his first appearance in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 55. Romulus claims to have been born in prehistoric times, born as one of the Lupine, these feral humans that evolved from canines rather than apes. But in Wolverine Volume 2, Issue 312, it's exposed that his origins are all just a fib, and the bones that Romulus planted at the elephant graveyard were just distractions. Nothing to do with his past or anything like that. He does have powers. Like Wolverine, his regenerative healing factor saves the day pretty often. Later on, he comes to fight Wolverine equipped. He has these black gloves that have 4 blades attached. 3 of them similar to Logan's adamantium claws, but he also has a 4th one, and it's like thumbs almost. They can take quite the beating from Logan's claws being adamantium as well. But when it comes to thumb wars, Romulus wins, that's it. He's got the other one. He can thumb war anyone. Kicking off the list at number 10, we have the Orb. He made his first appearance in Ghost Rider Volume 6, Issue 26. The Orb is, well, yeah, he's a guy with an eyeball for a head. Cool, that's a notable feature, I'd say. Well, he was born like that. His parents abandoned him at an early age because of it. Sad stuff. Now, the eye can do much more than freak people out and make squishy noises. The eye can blast people with a red energy beam, and he can walk on walls. So it's only fair that he's crossed paths with Spider-Man and Wolverine during this weird life. In Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine, the Orb has backup. He's got a group of robbers called Orblings, which I gotta say, it's a great name for a group. They're trying to get their hands on these rare jewels locked away in a bank. And as they're fighting each other, the three of them get transported across the timeline thanks to those, well, time diamonds. As if fighting an eyeball wasn't weird enough, this alternate timeline made the Orb even bigger and more powerful. He was well equipped to take on Peter and Logan. Number 9, the Iron Monk. Appearing only in Wolverine Volume 2, Issue 108, the Iron Monk was an assassin sent by the Hand to take down Wolverine and Pale Flower. This happened right after the two interrupted the group's plans in Japan, so the Tokyo Metropolitan Police had them locked up. So all of a sudden, the Iron Monk teleports into these holding cells, attacks all the guards, rips off the door to Logan's holding cell, and this guy was laughing at Wolverine and Pale Flower when they were trying to attack. It was useless to try and attack this guy. Nothing was working against the Iron Monk's durability. That was his main thing. And then all of a sudden, Yohei appeared and gave Wolverine the honor sword of the clan Yoshida, a sword that was forged from meteorite iron by a demon. Yeah, sounds like it's gonna do the trick. And before we continue on with this epic part 2, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, honestly, it really helps our channel a lot. All you gotta do is go, and then that's it. Then we can bring you more content, you look brighter, maybe I'll get a haircut, who knows? Good things will happen if you click like, basically, or subscribe. Oh my God, if you hit subscribe. Number 8, Tiger Shark. Not a tiger shark, but Tiger Shark. Meet Todd Arliss. He made his first appearance in Submariner issue 5. He was once a talented swimmer who took part in the Olympic Games, but after damaging his spinal cord saving a man, Todd was desperate to get back into the water. So he participated in an experiment performed by Dr. Lemuel Dorcas. He's a dork, sorry, I had to. That's where he had his DNA merged with Namor and a tiger shark. So obviously now we have a new supervillain. His personality changed as well as his abilities. He was initially a foe of Namor, of course, but in Wolverine Volume 2, Issue 19, Logan got a little wet and wild himself. Fighting underwater turns out was much harder. Wolverine gets his claws literally stuck in a reef at one point. Honestly, I felt like I was drowning while reading these 2 issues. A little stressful. Number 7, Cyber. Silas Burr made his first appearance in Marvel Comics Presents issue 85. He was born in Canada over 100 years ago. They're all so old. What's going on? He was an agent for the Pinkerton National Detective Agency in 1912, but was charged with 22 counts of murder and put on trial in Iowa. Not a great guy. And yes, he was guilty on all of those charges. He was about to be hanged, but Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth, was posing as a guard and helped Burr escape. After that, Burr was taken to the Canadian Army's training facility where he met Frederick Hudson, who was impressed by Burr because of how pushy and controlling he was for the men below him. So Hudson put Burr in command of the Devil's Brigade, which included Logan. So he was bossing Logan around. He was the one who pushed Logan non-stop to be made into this animal. So in Wolverine Origins, Romulus decided to give Burr a little upgrade in the form of adamantium, taking on this new fitting alias, Cyber. Number 6, Deathbird. Making her first appearance in Miss Marvel issue 9, Kelsey Naramani was born the eldest child of the Magister Naramani. She was born heir of the Shi'ar Empire's throne. What luck, must be nice. She was born with bird-like features. She was born with uncontrollable rage, and she's even got a set of claws as well. Deathbird was once recruited to serve Apocalypse as the Horseman War. She's mainly an X-Men villain, but with such similar features, I figured this list and this part 2 would be a great time to bring her name up because she's a total badass. Number 3, Gorgon. Tommy Shishido made his first appearance in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 20, and from birth, Tommy was a fast learner. At just 2 weeks old, he spoke a full sentence, and at 3 months old, he was walking around on his own. At age 1, reading and writing was part of his normal day, and at age 4, he was ranked one of the top 5 artists in modern Japan. And then come birthday number 13, he discovered he was a mutant. He had low-level telepathy, he could read minds from a short distance, but you don't want to have a staring contest with him at all, because if he locks eyes with you, you'll literally turn into stone. He remained blindfolded, relying on his telepathic abilities to carry him in battle, and it worked. He was actually pretty sick. The media dubbed him as the Gorgon, like the Medusa of our time. He found the Hand Sanctuary and within a year became their high priest, where he ran the ninja clan. Number 4. Doombringer. Also known as the Walker Between Worlds, Doombringer appeared once and only once, despite his menacing name. Wolverine's Doombringer was released back in 1997. It's a story told from the Madripoor years where Logan is uncovering the mystery of an ancient Japanese tale about the Doombringer, which was currently on its way to destroy us all. Lovely. The story puts Wolverine and the Silver Samurai against a 5-alarm freak from hell, as Logan puts it. Now the fight itself is just a mess. It's just guts and blood everywhere. Even Wolverine thinks, okay, the only way I can win here is just survive. Just give the most amount of blood and then we're good. And that's basically how it ends. The Doombringer is massive, it's scaly, it has sharp claws. It's definitely not one of Wolverine's easy days, that's for sure.
Number 3, Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is a master swordsman and a mutant. He is so confident in his abilities to beat Wolverine in battle that in issue number 1 of the 2020 Cable series, when Logan asks when the two are going to fight one another for sport and entertainment on Krakoa, Silver Samurai responds with, "Is it your intention to give everyone on the island a marker?" In reference to the fact that Wolverine basically just lost to young Cable, and suggesting that Logan himself would also lose to Silver Samurai. Silver Samurai is Kenyochio Harada. Ken's mutant abilities allow him to generate a tachyon field, which he can focus through anything that he pleases. Typically, he chooses to use this on his sword, which basically strengthens it, allowing him to cut through almost anything. And I mean almost anything. I don't think adamantium, but pretty much everything else.
Number 2, the Mongrels. Wolverine hooks up with many women over his long lifespan. I don't know how to put it lightly, but yeah, he has a lot of kids that run around. Sometimes those kids grow up and seek revenge on their mutant father, and the Mongrels are just that. The Mongrels are Logan's kids that grew up to become Shadowstalker, Fire Knives, Soft Fist, Gunhawk, and Cannonfoot. Okay, pretty sweet names. Pretty to the point names. They first appeared in Wolverine Volume 4 Issue 1, and their only goal was to ruin Logan's life. That's it. Just cause pain and suffering. So they joined the Red Right Hand, where they were trained to be used as literal weapons, hence those fun names. And then in Wolverine Volume 4 Issue 4, Gunhawk burned down a room filled with Wolverine's mementos and prized possessions over his long life. All this happened while Logan was literally in hell. So while he was down there melting, they were burning his stuff both on Earth as well. It's a lot of fire. Once Logan did get out of hell, 9 issues later, he invaded the Red Right Hand's base where the Mongrels then attacked him. They didn't make it too far, but Logan did give them a chance to surrender peacefully, so you gotta give him that. Not bad for a guy who just escaped hell. We actually just did a list on our top 10 superheroes who beat the devil, so if this kind of stuff intrigues you, be sure to check that out once you're done here. And finally, number 1, Deadpool. Wolverine villains you won't believe exist? Well, okay, here's one for you. Before all those box office records, Ryan Reynolds played the Merc, well, without a mouth, back in 2009. X-Men Origins Wolverine was a train wreck. It was a horrible take on Wade Wilson. The film was made during the 2007 writer's strike, so it was just a mess from the get-go. I feel like now we can rip this movie apart because, you know, it's in the past. Logan's good, he had his great ending. Deadpool's now in the MCU after 2 successful R-rated movies, so he's good. It's cool. We can make fun of it now. At the beginning of this movie, it's kind of close. I mean, Wade is quick with the quips, and the action, although it's aged and cheesy, is still at least entertaining. That is until later on in the movie when he returns for a big showdown with Wolverine, and it's just not the guy we want. His mouth is sewn shut, it's not even close. Not the guy, just not the guy.
You guys, if you can take
Okay?
6
You're not
feet.
that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Okay.
Okay?
You?
Absolutely.
You're gonna get arrested for this?
Arrested for doing what?
Number 10, Mystique. Raven Darkholme, also known as the villainous Mystique, can be very dangerous for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest ones being her ability to shapeshift. In an instant, she can become someone else entirely, and you never even know it. She can mimic every trait, even someone's voice. It's crazy. On top of that, she's also a highly skilled fighter, who usually uses her skills for some not so nice mutants. Although, she has dabbled on the side of good every now and then. But, like her power, she's constantly changing, and that makes her even more dangerous. Number 9, Storm. Storm shouldn't come as a surprise. She is not only incredibly powerful, but is also a fan favorite. She has the mutant ability of weather manipulation. She can literally create massive blizzards, electrical storms, tornadoes, hurricanes, I mean even tsunamis. Like, if that doesn't scream dangerous, then you need to get your definition of dangerous looked at. Seriously, not only is she dangerous on the power side, but she's also powerful in a lot of other ways. One of those being, she was once one of the leaders of Wakanda after marrying T'Challa, aka Black Panther. So she is someone you don't want to mess with. Unless you're crazy, then, you know, just go right ahead. Number 8, Cable. General audiences recently became a lot more familiar with Cable because of his appearance in Deadpool 2. Cable, also known as Nathan Summers, is the time-traveling son of Scott Summers, you know, Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor, who was later discovered to be a clone of Jean Grey. Man, the X-Men have some crazy love storylines. As I mentioned earlier, Cable is a time traveler, but along with that, his powers include, you know, telepathic illusions, telepathic cloak, mind link, telepathic camouflage, mind control, telekinesis, and he has a cybernetic eye implant, which can fire a very powerful laser. So powerful that it has even destroyed one of the Avengers' jets at one point. Number 7, Deadpool. Wade Wilson. Who doesn't love that guy? He's just awesome. Just don't get on his bad side, and you'll be okay. You know what? Never mind. I think it's impossible to stay off his bad side because he can just hate you in a split second for like no reason at all. He's unpredictable. To go along with that, he's a highly skilled mercenary and has one of the best healing factors in the Marvel Universe, which makes him almost impossible to kill. But he has fought Wolverine multiple times. One of the first times was in Wolverine issue 88. And in that fight, Deadpool won by stabbing his swords right into Logan's lungs. Ah, man. That hurts even to say that. Wolverine got his revenge though in Cable and Deadpool issue number 44. I mean, the list goes on and on. But let's not forget what their most famous fight of all is, right? Can you guess it? Okay, I'll just tell you. It's their fight from X-Men vs. Wolverine. One of the greatest fights in cinematic history. Okay, you know what? I'm not even gonna joke about that. It's just too hard. Okay, deep breath. Okay. Alright, I'm good. Alright. Let's just continue. Let's just keep moving on. Number 6, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a very, very dangerous dude. Not only is he one of the X-Men's greatest villains, but he's also believed to be one of the very first mutants, like ever. That's just creepy and cool. He was born in Egypt around 3000 BC. Now, Apocalypse has what he believes to be a very simple philosophy, that only the strong should be able to survive, and that's it. It doesn't just apply to mutants either. It could be anyone. If you're weak, just get out of town because Apocalypse has no plans for you. He even turned Wolverine into one of the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse, the Horsemen of Death. Aside from that, the dude is basically immortal. He has super strength, teleportation, telekinesis, telepathy, you know, self-molecular manipulation. So you can say he's pretty dangerous. There's a reason the X-Men fear him so much. Number 5, Legion. Legion, also known as David Haller, is a really interesting one. For the longest time, he was really unknown to anyone that wasn't a hardcore X-Men fan. But after getting his own critically acclaimed show on FX, he became fairly popular. David is the son of Charles Xavier. He has a form of dissociative identity disorder, which leads into his name, Legion, for his legion of personalities. The interesting thing about him is that his personalities have different mutant abilities. So, for example, one could have telekinesis, another telepathy, another super strength. It's kind of insane. It makes him really powerful, but also incredibly dangerous. You would have no idea what kind of fight you'd be getting yourself into. I mean, one moment he could be on your good side, but then a split second, he's against you with a completely new ability. It's that level of unpredictability that is truly terrifying. Now, Legion also leads us into the next person on our list pretty perfectly. Number 4, Charles Xavier. Yeah, his dad, the founder of the X-Men, good old Professor X. Now, Charles and Logan are almost always on the same side, so it's very unlikely that, they would get into a fight. But if they did, it would be really interesting. Charles is one of the most powerful telepaths in the Marvel Universe. Not only that, he's also one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe. Put those two things together and you have a very dangerous combo. He can create, telepathic illusions, create a mental link which becomes even more powerful when he's plugged into Cerebro. He can also use his abilities to control the minds of other people. Charles has even taken over someone else's mind completely where he has been able to control their body. It's kind of insane. And it just goes to show why you really don't want to get on his bad side. But luckily, he usually uses his powers for good and helps out so many mutants in the process. Although, he has made some very questionable decisions along the way. But I mean, who hasn't, right? Number 3, Scarlet Witch. Even though it has changed, I'm still considering Scarlet Witch to be a mutant. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to. It will be forever ingrained in my brain that she's a mutant. And I don't think anything will ever change that. But back to the main point, she's super dangerous. Like, almost wiped out every mutant in existence with a single word, dangerous. Yeah, she's literally responsible for millions of mutants losing their powers during the House of M storyline. Not only that, but she is also one of the strongest magic users in the universe. She can use chaos magic to warp reality and is a very, very skilled fighter. Throw in that she's also the daughter of Magneto and, you know, that's a pretty dangerous individual. I mean, even look at her in her live action appearances. She was able to take on Thanos in Endgame to the point where she almost probably would have killed him if it wasn't for, you know, his ship starting to fire. And I mean, Kevin Feige has said that Wanda is one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. So that makes two different universes where she is dangerous and powerful. That definitely tells you something. Number 2, Jean Grey. Everyone knows how powerful Jean Grey is, whether it's on her own or when she was, you know, Dark Phoenix. There's a reason why even Charles Xavier has feared her. Her powers are off the charts. Over the years, she's not only taken on some of the biggest, scariest villains in the Marvel Universe, but also its heroes. Most notably, you know, during the Dark Phoenix storyline, which is one of the most famous comic stories of all time. Fans just can't get enough of it. Even without the Phoenix Force, Jean has telepathy, you know, telekinesis, memory alteration, so basically she can erase, restore, or even implant memories into someone. She could literally erase someone's memories and make them a completely different person if she just wanted to. Of course, she wouldn't, unless it was like a life or death situation, but that option is always on the table. Number 1, Magneto. I've mentioned before how scary Magneto can be. It's not just because of his powers, it's his ability to manipulate people. He's crazy good at it. And if you need proof, just look at his army of followers. People trust him and will give their lives for him. And it's usually not even out of fear. It sometimes can be, but it's usually because they want to fight for him. I mean, his powers also really help. He has the ability to control all forms of magnetism, which he mostly uses to manipulate all forms of metal, including adamantium. He also has trained himself to fight off telepaths, so they can't control or use him. I mean, with all that, it's not hard to see why he's the X-Men's greatest foe, and one of the most dangerous people in the Marvel Universe.
Number 10, Cyclops. The rivalry between Scott and Logan is legendary at this point. And it's not just all about Jean either. Even when she's not there, they still can't get along. She's usually not there because she's temporarily dead. It's fine, it's a thing. The fact that they can't get along has a lot to do with their different base personalities. Scott is not only an authority figure, but someone who leads through opposition a lot, and he could care less if you like him or not. Wolverine responds super poorly to authority and is much more of a let's get this done, not a let's think this to death kind of person. Also a bit of a lone wolf. So they fight, be it verbally or physically, but this fight was actually because Wolverine was being influenced by the villain Sauron. Because of this, he began to hallucinate, seeing his teammates as enemies instead. This led to him tussling with Cyclops. While Wolverine was able to pin Cyclops, Scott was able to blast him off and far away and keep the fight on his own terms. People forget how strong Scott's optic blasts are. They're much more than just pretty lights. Number 9, Gambit. Now, unlike Cyclops, Wolverine and Gambit can get along and have enjoyed an easygoing friendship at times. So when these two face off, it's oftentimes more along the lines of intense sparring sessions, like it's more like let's see what we each can do. Such as in Uncanny X-Men number 273, where they fought in the Danger Room before it was a person that Xavier had been keeping trapped after it developed sentience. Dark stuff. Gambit's not above fighting dirty, which he does here. They're on par, which is already saying something. Old Man Logan. This is when Gambit realizes that he can make the Danger Room kinda psych Wolverine out, and he makes it create Lady Deathstrike within it. Now, Wolverine has some pretty complicated feelings about her, and so this leads to Gambit being able to overpower him. Well played or dirty pool? You decide. Number 8, Beast. That's right, even Dr. Hank McCoy is getting on the action of defeating Wolverine. Though it wasn't by choice. Beast and Wolverine have a pretty good relationship, so this happened while Beast was brainwashed. This occurred in the Here Comes Tomorrow storyline. Beast was taken over by an entity called Sublime. Sublime is a sentient bacterial life form. Sublime finds it difficult to infect mutants, and as a result, there are rumors that he is the cause of the societal hysteria surrounding them. Although, let's be fair, in some cases it's not hysteria. When Sublime had control of Beast, Beast, it also harnessed the Phoenix Force within him. And so when Logan went to take him on, Beast was able to negate his healing factor, turning him just into a guy with some enhanced reflexes and adamantium skeleton, which is still a lot, but not as much as it could be. Beast actually killed him in this encounter, and Jean had to go back in time to ensure the incident never took place in order for him to survive it. Number 7, Storm. Storm can control the weather. She has been worshipped as a god. There's something very wrong with the world if she can't defeat Wolverine. Now, while Storm and Wolverine may at times have a romance that's kind of so out there, at least at first glance, that I love it, this didn't stop her from killing him in X-Men Forever. This was a series that in a very noirish fashion opens with a dead Wolverine. He was the shock kill, the gasp at the beginning. Who could kill Wolverine? Well, it turned out that was an evil Storm. That's who. But why though, you may be asking? Well, keep asking, because the series was cancelled, so the answer was never revealed. Number 6, Kitty Pryde, aka Shadowcat. Kitty is a very powerful mutant, but she wasn't always perceived that way. Her depiction has grown over time as people have really come to ponder and appreciate just how truly terrifying a phasing ability is. Kitty taking out Wolverine shouldn't really be much of a shock. In a what if story entitled What If Wolverine Enemy of the State, Kitty would kill Wolverine. In this story, Wolverine had fallen under Hydra control, and he was proving quite the danger, killing his former friends and allies. As a result, Kitty ended up engaging with him. Since he was so out of control, she stuck her hand through his head and re-solidified it inside, destroying his brain, and her hand was stuck in his skull since he had chopped it off. And as a result, he couldn't get it out and he couldn't heal. Ouch, and also gross. Number 5, Apocalypse. Now you would think you wouldn't just try to take on an essentially immortal, terrifying, powerful mutant with just your claws. Yeah, you might think that, but you're not Wolverine. Ultimate Wolverine decided to take on Apocalypse head on. But I mean, a lot of things happen in the Ultimate Universe. Needless to say, it does not go well for Wolverine. Apocalypse is pretty similar between 616 and 1610. Wolverine gets some good hits in, but with Apocalypse's pedigree, healing factor, and other powers, Wolverine gets pretty badly beaten. Number 4, Magneto. We've talked about this many a time here on Top 10 Nerd. Magneto once ripped out Wolverine's adamantium skeleton, just separated it from his body, pulled the metal right out through the skin. While this didn't kill him, it did put him out of commission for a while. This action, while gruesome, also gave some that actually makes a whole lot of sense. Why hasn't he done that before now? That's because he was being nice. Nice guy Magneto. This action proved to be the breaking point for Charles, who erased Eric's memory using his telepathic powers. Actually, he just erased the whole self as a person. This action would unleash a darkness in Charles, and also unknown to him at the time, merge their two consciousnesses together, eventually creating the being known as Onslaught. Number 3, speaking of Onslaught, here he is. Once the fusion of Charles and Magneto was complete, the world was graced with Onslaught, an event that still has mixed reviews to this day. Well, however you felt about it, Onslaught was for a time described as beyond Omega level. People weren't going up against him one-on-one. No, you went in teams, and sometimes team-up teams, like the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. Wolverine against Onslaught, like a fly being swatted. Number 2, Proteus. What I'll always remember most about Proteus is Cyclops throwing coffee on Wolverine after. Proteus is the extremely powerful son of Moira McTaggart, too powerful to even boast a conventional physical form. Proteus can bend matter and reality to his will, so the best solution is obviously to take him on head on. Just jump right in there. Both Wolverine and Nightcrawler attempt this, and let's just say it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Proteus just completely unmakes them, warps them, turns them into goo and ooze, then warps the world around them. Wolverine is incredibly shaken by this encounter, for obvious reasons, and it causes Nightcrawler to have a crisis of faith. Cyclops needs Wolverine to fight, so he throws coffee on him. You have to forge your own path as a leader. And number 1, Wolverine. No, I don't mean like his demons or something poetic like that. I mean another time-traveling version of himself. Now, we've had a couple of versions straight up murder each other for the greater good, although some would argue it's always for the greater good because one of these with a zombie, you just gotta really decide. Play it by ear, basically. In the Age of Ultron, which is completely different from the MCU film, no comparison at all really, Wolverine ended up in a bit of a paradox, leaving the world with 2 Wolverines at the same time. And that's just one Wolverine too many, so one had to go. Wolverine murdered himself actually more than once in this arc, always from behind. I don't know, just there's something about that. Like, come on, look yourself in the eye.
Number 10, Omega Red. While Omega Red has also lost to Wolverine in the past, he's also had his fair share of victories against him. Omega Red initially proved almost too powerful to Wolverine, especially when it came to the use of death spores which weakened him. There was a time time when Omega Red successfully captured the hero, and he only succeeded in surviving by getting help to escape, unfit to take on Omega Red alone. More recently in the comics, Omega Red surfaced wanting to join Krakoa, but he was actually revealed to be in league with Dracula, and in fact helped Dracula to get his hands on Wolverine's blood, enabling the villain to walk in the sun. Since then, Omega Red has chosen to portray Dracula being truthful with the mutants and becoming their true ally, but Logan of course still finds it hard to trust him. He doesn't really believe he's the true ally. Perhaps because Wolverine himself remembers all the times that Omega Red has stabbed him in the front and the back and just basically stabbed him all around with his carbonadium tentacles. Number 9. Mysterio. Mysterio in an alternate reality completely defeats Wolverine, and in the most horrible way. In the Old Man Logan continuity, Mysterio manipulated Wolverine, getting him to fight against and kill all the X-Men, explaining how this could have happened given all their amazing abilities by claiming that his friends would likely hesitate to take him out. Wolverine at the time thought he was taking on a bunch of supervillains who had invaded the mansion, and Mysterio also claims that Wolverine's ego is kinda to blame for him accepting the illusion. After all, Wolverine believing that he could have possibly taken on all of these supervillains himself all at once does seem pretty arrogant. I gotta say, I kind of agree with Mysterio here. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists where we get to tell you stories about people kicking other people's butts, I love telling these stories, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Sabretooth. Sabretooth has beaten Logan so many times that I've personally lost count. Sometimes it seems as though Victor's sole purpose has been to make Wolverine suffer. Case in point, how it became a tradition for Sabretooth to go and mess up Wolverine once a year on his birthday. Sabretooth has also been the mastermind behind a great deal of psychological plots to mess with Logan, including at one point pitting his son Daken against him, forcing Wolverine to kill his own son. Wolverine thought this was how it had to be at the time, but he would actually later learn that it all happened due to the machinations of Sabretooth. People don't often think about how smart Sabretooth is, but he's pretty crafty. Number 7. Mystique. Mystique is one of those villains you don't want to underestimate because, well, it's really dangerous to do so. Case in point, why do I say case in point so much? Who's been saying that to me that I've been putting this in my script? An example being when Wolverine thought he had killed her and would never see her again, only for her to return having been resurrected by the Hand to get revenge on Wolverine for killing her. She not only defeated him in a physical sense, but also in a mental sense, using him to get information and also to mess with his head when she posed as Yukio. She really messed with him. But that's Mystique for you. Number 6. SPORE. While SPORE was an insanely powerful villain who did end up defeated in the end, it wasn't actually Wolverine that did the defeating in this scenario. Though he did fight against SPORE. SPORE appears in one of the earlier stories in Wolverine Volume 2 and was created by Archie Goodwin and John Byrne. It was an ancient entity who first appeared in issue 21, where we learned that the drug that was being used to increase the strength of Roundhouse at the cost of his sanity was actually a part of that villain, and that using that drug was kind of how it infected its victims and was able to move more into the physical world through them. SPORE, it turned out, was an ancient bioweapon created by the Deviants long ago that had laid dormant on planet Earth after requiring the strength of a Celestial in order to be defeated the first time around. Although Wolverine struggled to defeat this enemy, the possibly mutant healer Sister Salvation managed to use her powers to defeat it, cleansing SPORE permanently, but at great cost, with her hands and possibly ability to heal becoming dramatically damaged afterwards. But Wolverine couldn't have done that alone. He needed the Sister Salvation backup for that one. Number 5. Madeline Pryor. Another enemy who Wolverine likely wouldn't stand a chance against is Madeline Pryor. In the What If Inferno issue, we get to see what would happen if Madeline Pryor had won the day and she and Sim basically turned Wolverine into their little pet, unleashing his feral side and making him a complete monster. And I really do mean a complete monster. The hero doesn't even stand a chance against their influence as they help him to give in to the darker side of himself that he's always been working so hard to repress. It's even worse than losing a battle or his life, because in this story, Wolverine loses his morality and basically his humanity. I think that's worse. Is that worse than death? I think it's worse than death. If you lose entirely who you are. Number 4. Dracula. Dracula is a long-standing villain for the X-Men and Wolverine. As we discussed earlier with Omega Red, the villain recently managed to best Wolverine by concocting a plan to capture him and use his blood to power up himself and his other loyal vampires, forcing Omega to become his undercover agent on Krakoa. Of course, in the end, Omega Red would turn against him, allowing Wolverine and the other mutants to strike back, but during that first story of the new series back in issue 1, Wolverine saw himself pretty heartily defeated at the hands of Dracula, and what made it worse is that he didn't really even understand at the time that he had been playing right into Dracula's hands. Number 3. Magneto. Magneto is of course another major supervillain who bested Wolverine. He was the one responsible for transforming him into a feral version of himself, stripping Wolverine of the adamantium that coated his skeleton. This was a huge part of us learning more about Wolverine's abilities and his power set. This is when it was revealed that his claws were actually bone claws and they were themselves coated. We also learned here that he had the capacity to be intensely feral. I mean, we'd always known that Wolverine had a wild side, a feral side. It had been alluded to in the comics, but we didn't know just how wild Logan could be. Don't worry though, although Wolverine lost all of his adamantium in the fight against Magneto and his nose, Professor X made sure that Magneto paid for what he'd done, and that he could never hurt anyone again by completely cutting off his mind, in essence kinda leaving Magneto still physically alive but brain dead. It should also be noted that Magneto has killed Wolverine many times across multiple different realities and timelines. Number 2. Apocalypse. Apocalypse is a villain that Wolverine has faced across many different realities, whether with a team or on his own. In some realities, Wolverine has managed to eventually win the war against Apocalypse, but has also lost battles here and there along the way. In the X-Men animated series from the 90s, we see no exception, as Wolverine attempts to take on Apocalypse alongside the X-Men. When it's his turn to strike, he completely misses Apocalypse with his claws, who manages to escape along with most of his horsemen. Kind of embarrassing. Number 1. Dark Phoenix. While Jean Grey would likely never want to hurt Wolverine, and he has honestly almost killed her on a few occasions across the multiverse, always to her benefit of course, usually, to avoid her having to suffer. When Dark Phoenix emerges, it's quickly made apparent just how much stronger this persona and force is in comparison to Wolverine. When the darker side of Phoenix Force makes itself known at one point during Phoenix End Song, Wolverine doesn't stand a chance against it. In fact, he only survives his fight with the Dark Phoenix because he fits into her plan, with her aiming to use him as bait. It does seem as though he succeeds in weakening the Dark Phoenix, but once again, this seems to all be part of the Phoenix Force's plan, allowing her to take a more active role as she works towards getting what she wants, which she thinks at the time is Cyclops and his unlimited energy source, his optic blasts, but in reality what Phoenix really wants is to feel whole again and feel loved. What a lovely little moral at the end of that story.